Oh, did you? You air shotted me.
I just air shot you. That should be like a special trick, right?
Yeah, I'll show that clip.
Greetings viewers and subscribers, welcome to Update 13. The changes in this update drastically contribute towards the much needed stealth for the game, improving the movement system, expanding on the gun mechanics for balancing other characters, along with some updated visuals to the game, the return of the Ninja and Sentinel, and the implementation of jump pads. In previous versions of the game, all players had their health bar visible, including the enemies. This meant that the players cannot hide from each other and took away opportunities for ambush attacks and flanking maneuvers. Enemy health bars are now invisible in this update. In order to see their health, the player must align their crosshair to the enemy. It is affected by line of sight, and the players cannot see the enemy's health through walls. Once the player scans the enemy, the health bar will show on the player's screen for a second before disappearing. This means the player can easily look at the enemy's health bar without getting distracted by fast-paced movements, and also prevents the player from always identifying the enemy's location, should the enemy decide to quickly hide behind cover. The team's health will still be visible, even through walls. This is to help the player identify their team's position, and also be alerted if any of their allies are at low health. When attacking enemies, a combo hit indicator will appear. This lets the player know they have landed a shot on an enemy and how many shots have hit the enemy. The combo hit indicator can also let the player know if they have hit multiple enemies from explosives. Providing extra detail to the number of landed shots on the combo hit indicator adds further satisfaction to the gameplay. Sniper at one point had the propulsion grenade as her secondary weapon. This was replaced with an SMG to help deal with airborne enemies at close range. However, this took away most of her mobility as she couldn't grenade jump anymore. By introducing a new gun feature to the game, this opens to much more varied gameplay. Sniper's SMG now has a secondary weapon which holds the propulsion grenades. Rather than sharing the propulsion grenade magazine with the main magazine, the sniper can dump a full magazine on an enemy, then finish them off with a propulsion grenade, or escape the scene by grenade jumping. The propulsion grenade has massive blast radius with extremely high knockback power, but suffers from extremely poor damage output. Since there are two different magazines for the gun, the user is also given the option to choose which magazine to reload. Pressing the reload key while holding the two magazine weapon will open up a reload screen. The user is then asked to choose which magazine to reload. Left-clicking reloads the main magazine, while right-clicking reloads the secondary magazine. In the last update, there were major changes to the game, but also broke some characters. The Ninja and Sentinel were not present in the previous update, but are now playable in this update. The Ninja's wall jumping has been touched up a bit. The player can wall run again, but can still cling onto walls indefinitely, and can even reposition themselves for stealthy ambush attacks. The overall controllability feels smoother and easier to perform wall jumping, wall running, and wall clinging. Sentinel finally has the ability he needed most, the energy shield. Back in Update 5, the shield was introduced but was not functional in online play. With a lot of work done prior to this update, Sentinel can finally block incoming attacks to protect himself and his allies. The other two shields mentioned in Update 5 will be eventually programmed into this game. Prior to this update, all weapons had different stats for the shift key. These stats determined whether the user would dash or sprint. This was really confusing for players and offered a fixed playstyle among weapons. Players had the risk of mixing up the stats and would dash with a weapon when they intended to sprint. The new movement system change in this update does not get rid of these features, but makes them easier to understand and improves the balancing of each weapon. Everyone can now sprint and dash with any weapon, and some can even slide. Sprinting is now done by double tapping W, A, S, or D, and dashing is done by tapping Shift while moving. Normally, dashing is done through double tapping the movement keys. However, this caused wrist pain, as dashing was frequently used in battle, and the distance of the dash depends how long the key was held. Sprinting isn't a key that will be pressed often, so double tapping felt that it would make more sense, while the shift key was reserved for dashing. Sliding did exist before this update, but certain weapons had impractical stats to determine whether they could slide or not. If crouching had low acceleration but also reduced stamina while crouched, it means the user can slide. However, treating it like a crouch function felt weird and clunky. Weapons that did have proper crouching could not slide. With this new update, almost every weapon can slide and crouch properly. To slide, the user must dash in any direction, quickly crouch, then immediately release the shift key and any movement keys, and the user will now slide. Excellent for surprise attacks or escaping enemy fire. The options menu has been expanded a bit, including volume control, video quality, and game settings. Players can now customize their field of view and the gun model field of view. Other customizable options make a return to this update. Upon request by a user, a new optional feature has been added to appeal traditional FPS gamers: the dynamic crosshair. This crosshair behaves differently from the default crosshair, as the dynamic crosshair expands to the estimated recoil spread of the gun while firing. Rather than knowing exactly where the bullets will land, this crosshair helps the player know where the bullets will roughly land within the crosshair radius. Pick your style, and take aim. Quite interestingly, some games did not allow players to look a full 90 degrees up and down. Worry no more. The full 90 degrees of freedom allows the player to easily attack airborne targets and bomb down at their enemies. Jump pads are a fun little update that has been added to make map navigation easier for characters who cannot rocket jump or wall jump. Lastly, Soldier's Assault Rifle got a slight visual upgrade. It felt quite outdated compared to the other models, so additional aesthetics have been added to the Assault Rifle. Further improvements still needed. That's all for this update. My name is BountyXSnipe, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Field of View sliders. Greatest feature ever.